never too late to learn in life. And I learned that and that's why I'm still working, I guess, because I learn something new all the time.
He cheated death in the ocean, outlasted Hollywood's doubts, and built a legend that still moves. The stare, the silence, the slow burn, those were his tools. But under all that was work, fear, stubborn grit, and a long road that hurt as much as it shined. The public saw a tough man. The life behind it was rough, messy, and human. At 95, Clint Eastwood is still a man of routine and quiet choices. He keeps the noise low, the diet simple, and the work close. The story of how he got here starts with a boy who would not sit still and a night in 1951 when the Pacific tried to take him. It is a story of risk, regret, and a second wind that lasted for decades, and it never moves in a straight line. Clint Eastwood was born on May 31st, 1930. He was an 11-pound baby, big enough that the nurses called him Samson. His parents, Clinton Sr. and Ruth, carried English, Scottish, Dutch, German, and Irish roots. The 1930s were hard on most families. Jobs came and went. His father chased work as a salesman and took whatever kept the lights on. The family moved many times before settling in Piedmont, California. By 1940, life looked stable. They had a pool. They had a club membership. On paper, the storm had passed. But school did not click for Clint. He was held back in junior high. He got expelled from Piedmont High after a string of pranks, the kind you laugh at later, not during. A rude message on the scoreboard, a burning effigy on school grounds. When teachers pointed him toward school plays, he shrugged. His hands wanted engines, not essays. He loved what he could fix. He pulled apart car engines to see how they breathed. He learned aircraft maintenance from manuals and from men who knew. He hit tennis balls and golf balls because he liked games he could play alone. And he sat at the piano until his fingers bled, pushing ragtime runs until the sound was clean. That is not glamour. That is repetition. The lesson was simple and harsh. Show up, do the thing, do it again. It planted a seed. It also set him apart from kids who wanted a grade more than a skill. Work became a habit, not a slogan. Before the camera ever found him, Clint Eastwood had calluses. He logged in Springfield, Oregon. He earned a Red Cross card and worked as a lifeguard. He played piano in an Oakland bar because tips come faster than dreams. A party in Malibu opened a small door. He shook hands with director Howard Hawks and felt, for a second, how a break might begin. But one meeting does not erase rent. He needed steadier ground. Then the Korean War draft came in 1951, and the Army sent him to Fort Ord on the Monterey coast. He taught swimming. He learned order. He stayed stateside. It felt safe. It wasn't. The ocean tried to take him before Hollywood ever could. On one flight back from Seattle, the sky was rough. The back door of the plane popped open and would not seal. The radio died. The oxygen systems failed. When the fuel ran out, the pilot ditched the aircraft into the Black Pacific. The water was freezing. The current pulled. Sharks lived there. Clint and the pilot inflated small rafts and started paddling. A wave flipped Clint's raft and threw him into the dark. He swam 2 to 4 miles. No one can agree on the number. Bioluminescence sparked at his hands like ghost fire. The cold cut through muscle and belief. He saw things that were not there. He kept moving. He reached shore and stumbled into a radio station, shaking and half numb. The pilot made it too. The long swim did more than save a life. It drew a hard line in him between fear and action. He would cross that line again and again. Television gave him a doorway, and he walked in with a squint and left with a myth. Bit parts led to better parts. He watched everything. Where the camera sat, how light worked on faces, how silence could carry a scene. Then came the steady job. Rawhide, a Western on TV, made him a weekly visitor in American homes. He learned how to hit the mark and save the energy for the close-up. He learned how to do more with less, fewer words, longer looks, a pause that made the room lean in. Soon, the big screen took him farther. The late 1960s brought a new kind of Western from Europe, spare, stylish, and violent. Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy turned Eastwood into the man with no name. No wasted motion, no need to explain, a stare that did the talking. Audiences in Italy saw the myth first. Americans followed. Clint rode that wave without chasing it. By 1971, San Francisco wasn't just a backdrop. It was a city under the shadow of rising crime headlines. People were afraid. Newspapers ran numbers, and the numbers went up. The argument about law and order grew loud. Dirty Harry landed right in the middle of that storm. Harry Callahan was a cop in a brittle city who pushed past the edges of the rule book. Critics called it dangerous, even fascist, and argued that it glorified a vigilante. But audiences saw something else, a man doing what the system would not. The split was stark. Critics bristled, but the box office soared. One role pulled Clint into a national fight about justice. The line, "Do you feel lucky?" wasn't only a movie quote. It was a challenge to the moment. And once he spoke it, the image stuck. He wore the weight of that character for years. He refused to sit inside one box. He tried comedy with Every Which Way But Loose and its orangutan co-star Clyde because it made him laugh and because it made crowds show up. He took on the careful, quiet escape in Escape from Alcatraz in 1979, playing a man who swims the bay at night for freedom. Art brushed against memory. He knew what freezing water does to a chest. He knew what a long swim does to a mind. The roles got bigger. The risks did too, on screen and off. One mountain scene stopped being pretend in a single, brutal moment. In 1975, while filming The Eiger Sanction on a Swiss cliff, a rock slide struck. Climber and stunt double David Knowles was killed, and fellow climber Mike Hoover was badly hurt. Days before, the crew had staged a similar fall for the camera. Now the rope hung with no cut, and silence did the rest. Clint felt the weight of it. He thought about shutting down the film. The crew urged him to finish, to honor the man who had trusted them. They did, but the shock stayed. It reminded everyone that real carries a price no story can soften. From then on, his best films kept one promise: show the cost, not just the shot. He had already tried directing by then. Play Misty for Me showed a different side, control behind the lens, not just in front of it. Early on, some critics sneered and called it actor vanity. They said he was borrowing the prestige without the craft. He did not fight back in print. He answered with films. He kept his style lean. He shot fast. He trusted actors. He let scenes breathe. The same restraint he used on his face, he used on the story. At first, people missed it. Over time, it became the point. The toughest men he played started breaking on the inside. Through the 1980s and early 1990s, his characters wore the years. In Firefox, he was a pilot haunted by panic and war, a man whose body and mind were not on the same team. In Tightrope, a detective stalked a killer while fighting the darkness in himself. In The Rookie, obsession put other people in danger. In White Hunter Black Heart, he became a director so locked on an elephant hunt that his moral compass spun. These were not clean wins. These were stories about pride, shame, and the cost of trying to have it both ways. The shift was slow and deliberate. The tough man was still there, but he was facing himself now. Then the West returned, older and honest. Unforgiven stripped the gunslinger down to grief, fear, and a past that would not stay buried. Clint played a widower and former outlaw who took one last job and found out the bill always comes due. The violence in that film is heavy. It hangs. It hurts. The movie won big, Best Picture, Best Director, and more. But the deeper win was the way it closed a circle. He had once made Westerns feel cool. Now he made them feel true. It didn't just win, it reset the Western's moral compass for a new generation. In 1986, he did something that surprised even his fans. He ran for mayor of Carmel by the Sea, the small coastal town he loved. The campaign wasn't about glamour. It was about zoning rules, small business rights, and keeping the town friendly to locals and visitors. He won. He worked on practical things, permits, sidewalks, signs, boring work that matters when you live there. He pushed fixes that helped local shops and kept the town's character intact. The message was simple. Fame does not mean you skip the chores. He served, he finished, and he went back to films with a deeper sense of how a place takes care of its people. The 2000s brought late-career power. Mystic River cut deep, with performances that won awards and a story that stayed under your skin. $1 Million Baby swept the Academy and sparked tough talk about its ending. Some called it compassionate. Others could not accept it. That was the point. It made people sit with a hard choice. Letters from Iwo Jima took a World War II story and told it from the other side, with quiet respect. Gran Torino drew crowds and drew fire, praise for its rough honesty and backlash for its blunt language. Eastwood's films in these years did not play it safe. They cut. They provoked. They kept people talking. Later, American Sniper split the room again. Huge box office, strong praise, sharp criticism. He knew what would happen, and made it anyway. In Space Cowboys, an older astronaut got one more shot at the sky. In Bloodwork, a retired profiler came back even as his health faltered. In $1 Million Baby, a cautious trainer opened his heart and paid the price. In Gran Torino, a bitter veteran learned grace across a fence line. In The Mule, he played a man who had run from duty so long he forgot what it felt like to stay. In Cry Macho, he took one more dusty ride and let the camera listen more than speak. These were not heroes in the old sense. They were men learning late that strength without mercy is empty. The gap between the image and the man widened at home. Clint married Maggie Johnson in 1953. Fame grew, travel increased, and so did temptation. A daughter, Lori Murray, was born from a hidden relationship and placed for adoption without his knowledge, according to later reports. Decades later, she found him through a private investigator. With stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis, whom he met on Rawhide, he had a daughter, Kimber. With Maggie, he also had 2 children, Kyle and Allison. In 1972, Sandra Locke entered his life while both were still attached to other partners. Their long relationship burned hot and ended cold. Locke filed lawsuits, accusing him of fraud and broken promises, saying he blocked her career behind closed doors. He denied the claims. Settlements and new suits followed. It painted him in a harsh light and showed how far private hurt can spill into public view. For a man who built an image on silence, this was one story he could not control. Around the same period, Clint had 2 children, Scott and Catherine, with flight attendant Jocelyn Reeves. Later, with actress Frances Fisher, he welcomed daughter Francesca. In 1996, he married TV news anchor Dina Ruiz. Their daughter Morgan was born soon after. Their marriage ended in 2013. In 2015, Clint appeared with Cristina Sandera, a steady presence after years of noise. Over time, he was seen at events with ex-partners and children together, a sign that time had done what time does. It did not fix everything. It softened edges so people could stand in the same room. Fame makes private choices public, and public talk can turn cruel. Clint learned that too. He learned that a stern face on a poster does not protect a family from pain. He learned that being a legend does not make you a perfect partner or a perfect father. What he could do was keep working and keep showing up where it mattered. He kept doing that, even when the headlines turned the spotlight where he did not want it. After a long stretch out of sight, Clint reappeared at a Jane Goodall conservation event in Carmel by the Sea, the town he had served, and still calls home. He looked lean, with longer hair and a beard. He smiled. He spoke with Goodall. He kept it simple. Around the same time, reports placed him behind the camera again, directing and producing a courtroom drama, working quietly at his own pace. The message was not loud. It was clear. He is still moving. His daily life is simple. He keeps to a low-fat, high-protein diet and watches his cholesterol. His father died young from heart trouble, and that fact never left him. He walks, he lifts, he keeps a routine. He does not try to be 35. He tries to be steady. His son, actor Clint Eastwood, credits his father for teaching him to train and eat with discipline. That is not a headline. It is a habit. It is also a reason he has lasted this long. Look back at the lessons, and you can see how they stack. The ocean night taught him that fear is a feeling, not a fate. You can be cold and exhausted and still move your arms. You can be lost and still look for the shoreline. The mountain taught him that risk is real and comes with names and families. If you choose danger for art, you carry duty when the day goes wrong. The lawsuits and breakups taught him that charm does not fix hurt. Only time, honesty, and changed behavior help. And even then, the help is imperfect. The roles in his middle years taught him that the bravest man is the one who admits the cost. Now look at the work. Dirty Harry is a young man's thrill, born in a city fed up with fear. It carried all the arguments of its time and put them in a single face. Critics swung hard, and audiences lined up anyway. Escape from Alcatraz is the cold math of survival. Patience, detail, the slow work of getting free. The Iger sanction is the risk you cannot fake. One slip, and the story ends. Unforgiven is the bill that comes due. What violence does to a man and a town. Mystic River is grief with no easy exit. $1 Million Baby is love and loss in a small room. A choice that breaks people open. Gran Torino is change in a backyard. How a fence can be a wall or a bridge. American Sniper is service and trauma under a bright light, praised and fought over at the same time. The Mule is a late life reckoning. Cry Macho is a soft goodbye to swagger. Together they read like a diary, where the entries are films. He learned early that a silence can be louder than talk. He built characters who do not waste words. He built scenes that breathe. He trusts the pause. He uses a look to do the work of a speech. That always felt tough. In the later films, it also feels tender. A man who has lost a lot does not fill the air. He waits for the right sentence and then lets it land. That is an old skill. It is also a gift for the viewer. It makes space for us to feel something without being told what to feel. The awards came late, but when they came, they landed hard. Unforgiven took home the big ones and changed the way people talked about him. He was no longer just a face. He was a director with a voice and a style. Mystic River put him back on the stage with actors carrying gold. $1 Million Baby swept the night and stirred argument in the morning. That mix, praise and pushback followed his later films. He never chased safe. He chased the story as he saw it and let people fight it out after. None of this makes him a saint. It makes him a worker. He is not the sum of one role or one scandal or one trophy. He is the hours on set, the early mornings, the edits that no one sees, the choice to go home and eat something simple, the choice to keep walking even when the press turns mean, the choice to show up at a daughter's event, the choice to call a son and ask about training, the choice to stand at a local conservation night and shake hands. It is a pile of small things. It adds up. Critics who once said his directing was ego had to shift. The clean lines, the fast shoots, the trust in quiet, the belief that less can be more. Those choices do not look flashy. They look like confidence. They look like a man who knows when a story is done and does not dress it up to hide doubt. Younger directors point to that restraint and learn from it. Actors talk about how he runs a set, calm, no yelling, precise. The same steadiness he craved as a kid bouncing from town to town, he built at work. He still lives close to the coast. He keeps the circle small. He guards his energy. He lets the work speak and lets other people make the noise if they want to. When he reappeared after months out of sight, he did not give a speech about health or rumors. He stood next to Jane Goodall, smiled, and talked about something bigger than movies. That is very like him. He does not argue, he demonstrates. Time narrows what counts. For Clint Eastwood, it looks like this. A birth in San Francisco in 1930. A boy who broke rules and learned craft in garages and at a piano. A young man who swam in the dark and found the shore. 95 years later, he is still here, still working, and still letting silence do the talking.